Have you ever been hiking through the woods and heard a faint buzzing sound coming from the forest floor? If you answered yes, then you've probably looked down and seen this harmless little insect going about its day. But what if that buzz had a sinister source? What if it was coming from a tiny but deadly snake? Welcome back. I'm here. Today we're taking a look at one of the smallest venomous snakes in North America, but whose bite packs a serious punch. We'll explore its unique adaptations, including its nearly silent rattle and its surprisingly effective venom. So be sure to stick around until the end to learn all about the Pygmy Rattlesnake. But before we get into it, be sure to hit that like button and subscribe so you never miss an exciting episode. Let's start by talking about the different types of Pygmy rattlesnakes. There are three main subspecies of Pygmy rattlesnakes: the Carolina Pygmy Rattlesnake, Sistrurus, miliarius, the dusky Pygmy Rattlesnake, Sistrurus miliarius, and the western Pygmy Rattlesnake, Sistrurus miliarius. Each of these subspecies has a slightly different geographic range and appearance. However, in general, Pygmy rattlesnakes are relatively small, typically reaching a maximum length of about 24 inches when fully mature. They have thick bodies, which makes them appear shorter and wider than many other snake species. Their coloration can vary depending on where they live, but they usually have a gray or tan background color with rows of dark spots or blotches along their backs. Some Pygmy rattlesnakes even have a reddish or orange stripe running down the center of their heads and necks. But perhaps the most distinctive feature of the Pygmy rattlesnake is its tail. The end of its tail consists of a very small rattle that can make a faint buzzing sound when the snake shakes its tail. This rattle is much smaller than the rattles of most other rattlesnake species and is often broken off by the time the snake is captured or encountered by humans. Even though the Pygmy rattlesnake is venomous, it's not considered to be a highly venomous snake. Its venom is primarily composed of cytotoxin and neurotoxin, which cause pain, swelling, and local damage to the tissues around the bite. While a bite from a Pygmy rattlesnake can be serious, especially for children or small pets, it's rarely fatal for a healthy adult. The Pygmy rattlesnake is found in the southeastern United States, primarily in Florida, Georgia, Alabama, Mississippi, and Louisiana. It prefers habitats such as pine, flatwoods, dry uplands, marshy edges of ponds or lakes, and mixed forests. They often seek shelter among grass or leaf litter and are commonly spotted near water. However, they can also thrive in dry scrub or even gardens. Despite being excellent swimmers, they typically inhabit areas with ample vegetation, utilizing it for concealment during the day and ambushing their prey. In contrast to the intimidating rattlesnakes depicted in movies, Pygmy rattlesnakes aren't aggressive towards humans. They only strike if they feel threatened or cornered. When threatened, they usually try to escape, but if unable to flee, they may vibrate their tail tip, attempting to scare off the predator. These snakes are mostly sit-and-wait ambush predators, meaning they spend most of their time motionless, relying on their camouflage to blend in with their surroundings. They strike very quickly when prey comes within striking range. Additionally, some Pygmy rattlesnakes have been observed using their tail tips or other lures to attract prey. This behavior has mainly been reported in captive snakes, but it has also been documented in the wild. Interestingly, juvenile Pygmy rattlesnakes sometimes have a bright tail tip that they use to lure prey. This adaptation is thought to be particularly effective for attracting the attention of visually oriented prey, such as lizards and small birds. That leads us to ask, what exactly is a pit viper, and how does it work? Well, pit vipers are a group of venomous snakes that are named for the heat-sensory pits located between their eyes and nostrils. These pits are actually modified scales that contain specialized cells called pit organs. The pit organs detect infrared radiation, allowing pit vipers to sense the heat signature of their prey or predators. By sensing the heat signature of an approaching animal, pygmies and other pit vipers can determine its size, shape, and location. This information helps them decide whether or not to flee, ambush the animal, or remain motionless and rely on their camouflage. Now, let's take a closer look at those scales. Pit scales are a type of epidermal scale found in pit vipers, a group of venomous snakes that includes pygmies. Unlike regular scales, pit scales contain highly specialized cells called pit organs. These pit organs are sensory receptors that detect infrared radiation. allowing the snakes to sense the heat signatures of nearby objects. Each pit organ consists of a membrane-bound pit that contains a variety of sensory cells. The cells are connected to nerves that transmit signals to the brain, which interprets the signals as temperature information. Pit scales are found in 2 rows on either side of a snake's head, with each row containing several pit scales. The pits are located between the eye and nostril of the snake and are covered by a thin membrane that allows for the detection of subtle changes in temperature. Pit scales are more sensitive than the scales found on the rest of the snake's body, which means that pit vipers can detect even the smallest changes in temperature. For example, they can detect the heat signature of a mouse moving through tall grass from up to 15 feet away. The faint buzz of the pygmy rattlesnake's rattle can serve as a warning to potential predators. When the snake shakes its tail, the hollow interlocked segments of the rattle vibrate, producing a low-frequency sound that can be heard from a distance. Although it may seem counterintuitive, the effectiveness of the rattle as a warning device is enhanced by its small size. Because the rattle is so tiny, it can easily be mistaken for a leaf or twig, which means that predators are less likely to investigate it closely before deciding to attack. The fact that the rattle is often hidden among the leaves on the forest floor also contributes to its effectiveness as a warning signal. Potential predators such as birds or mammals must venture into the snake's immediate vicinity to hear the rattle, giving the snake valuable time to respond to the threat. This response may involve coiling its body and readying itself to strike, or simply retreating into a safer location. By remaining motionless and relying on its camouflage, the snake can avoid being detected until it has a chance to escape. Overall, the small size of the pygmy rattlesnake's rattle is an important adaptation that allows it to warn off potential predators without drawing unnecessary attention to itself. So let's talk about the pygmy rattlesnake's venom. As we mentioned earlier, the pygmy rattlesnake is venomous, and its venom can cause pain, swelling, and local damage to the tissues around the bite. However, it's important to note that a bite from a pygmy rattlesnake is not usually fatal for a healthy adult. Despite its small size, the pygmy rattlesnake's venom is surprisingly potent and can cause significant discomfort and swelling at the site of the bite. In severe cases, the pain and swelling can persist for days or even weeks. However, fatalities due to pygmy rattlesnake bites are extremely rare. This is because the snake's venom is primarily cytotoxin and neurotoxin, which cause localized pain and swelling rather than systemic effects. Bites from pygmy rattlesnakes should still be treated seriously, and medical attention should be sought promptly. However, the likelihood of a fatal outcome is very low. We've talked about the pygmy rattlesnake's rattle, but what about its bite? Well, pygmy rattlesnakes are not known for being aggressive towards humans, and they will typically only bite if they feel threatened or cornered. However, it's still possible for a person to be bitten by one of these snakes, especially if they are hiking in areas where the snakes live. If you are bitten by a pygmy rattlesnake, it's important to remain calm and seek medical attention immediately. The severity of the pain and swelling will vary depending on factors such as the amount of venom injected and the location of the bite. However, the good news is that fatalities due to pygmy rattlesnake bites are extremely rare. As we mentioned before, the pygmy rattlesnake's venom is primarily cytotoxin and neurotoxin, which cause localized pain and swelling rather than systemic effects. Therefore, while a bite from a pygmy rattlesnake can be painful and potentially dangerous, it is not usually fatal for a healthy individual. That brings us to an important question. How common are pygmy rattlesnake bites? Well, since pygmy rattlesnakes tend to live in remote areas and are generally shy around humans, encounters with them are relatively rare. As a result, the number of recorded bites is also low. According to experts, there are only a handful of recorded pygmy rattlesnake bites in the United States each year. Most of these bites occur in southern states such as Florida, Georgia, and Alabama, where the snakes are most commonly found. However, it's important to note that the actual number of bites may be higher than what is recorded, since many people who are bitten by snakes do seek medical attention or may not realize they were bitten by a pygmy rattlesnake specifically. Nonetheless, despite their small size and relatively low number of bites, pygmy rattlesnakes should still be respected as potentially dangerous creatures. It's always wise to exercise caution when dealing with any venomous snake and to seek medical attention promptly if bitten. Finally, let's talk about the conservation status of the pygmy rattlesnake. According to the International Union for Conservation of Nature, or IUCN, the pygmy rattlesnake is listed as a species of least concern. This means that the species is not currently at risk of extinction. However, this doesn't mean that the pygmy rattlesnake is immune to threats. In fact, they are facing a number of challenges that could potentially impact their population numbers. One of the biggest threats to the pygmy rattlesnake is habitat loss. As human development continues to encroach on their natural habitats, these snakes are being forced to move into smaller and more fragmented areas. This can make it difficult for them to find food and mates, which can lead to a decline in population numbers. Another threat to the pygmy rattlesnake is being killed by humans. Many people are afraid of snakes and will kill any snake they come across, regardless of whether it is venomous or not. This is obviously a problem for the pygmy rattlesnake, as it is a venomous snake and should not be handled by untrained individuals. Additionally, pygmy rattlesnakes are often killed as a result of road mortality. As their habitats become more fragmented, they are forced to cross roads to find new areas to live in. This can be dangerous for them, as they are often hit by cars. That's all for today. Don't forget to like this video and share your thoughts. Thanks for watching.